All right, was it a filler episode?
What do you think, Kevin? You know what, Kevin? You tell me. Was it a filler episode or not? 'Cause I don't think I think part of it was, the other part not so much. I mean, knowing what happened to the little Wookiee Jedi, what's his name?
Gungi?
Gungi. I was like Gremlin, Gungi.
Gary.
Gary. We're gonna call him Gary from now on. So now we know that Gary is back on Kashyyyk, so that's cool. But like other than that, I mean, like we saw the Trandoshan like bounty hunters that were there, like helping the Empire like clean up the Wookiees and round them up.
Well, were the Trandoshans helping the Empire? Were the Trandoshans doing it because either they were A, getting paid, or B, because they're the sworn enemies of the Wookiees anyway?
Yes, I mean,
Because
sure,
they didn't
dude.
follow. They didn't. That guy wasn't following orders.
Kevin, if
They were like,
someone
"We need-"
hated you a lot and they were like, "Hey, you want to go over to the rare drop office and maybe just like kick Kevin?" Then be like, "Yeah, sure, I'll go over there. Maybe, I don't know.
You're giving
See
people
what
ideas
happens."
now. I don't like that.
But I mean, like that's the same idea. It's like the Trandoshans are like, "Hey, like we know you hate the guy, the Wookiees. You want to just come over and help us?" They're like, "Yes, I would love to."
Yeah. So.
Oh, yes to both.
Yeah. I don't know if they were getting paid because they weren't following orders. Like the stormtroopers were like, "We have to call this into Imperial Command," and he was like, "Not if I catch him first."
Yeah, I think they were just guns for hire. I think they were just there because they were driving separatist tanks. They had like the separatist tanks that were there. They weren't Imperial tanks. So it seems like they brought in like their own weaponry and their own stuff, and the clones were just there as backup.
The fear that Gungi had seeing the Bad Batch was pretty intense. And then the other thing too was in every other episode when the Bad Batch has to go off and do something else, they always complain about how much it's going to cost or this, that, and the other thing. They didn't even blink an eye to help Gungi in this episode, which does show you their character as people.
Mm-hmm.
And even he said to the chieftain Yana, he said, it's a child. Like we had to do it. So I think they were really just trying to show you that they are, continually good people and they're trying to do right by everyone in the galaxy. I got really excited when I saw the spider webs because I was like, oh, those damn Kinrath spiders on Kashyyyk. I remembered them from KOTOR. And you always remember when we saw the big spider Mandalorian, it was like, it's Kinrath. And then they were like, it's not a Kinrath. I was like, son of a bitch.
Mm-hmm.
So when I saw those spider webs, I was like, it better be. And then it said it in the subtitles. I was like, thank you, God.
Mm-hmm.
So I got one of the most annoying creatures in KOTOR back on the screen. And then, the big thing was too, Tim, and I wasn't sure if you would think about this, but knowing what happens to Kashyyyk by Aftermath and seeing where they're at now. So the Empire hasn't completely taken over the planet yet. By the time we get to Aftermath, it's like a slave colony, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh yeah, it's bad. Like if you, we get to see Kashyyyk a few times. We see like we're in it now, and then if you go back and play Jedi Fallen Order,
yep.
you get to go to Kashyyyk at another point, where like the rebels are essentially trying to fight for Kashyyyk. We know that they fall. They're not able to do it until Han Solo and Chewbacca come in Aftermath and end up freeing all the Wookiees. So yeah, it's really interesting to see like just the continuation of just like the overall just downfall of Kashyyyk and the Wookiees. It's very sad. Yeah, it's really sad because like they end up just getting turned into a slave colony. Like it's just a slave planet. And that's what the Empire does is they enslave the locals and they make them harvest their planet's resources to zero, and then they leave the planet, and it's really sad.
Yeah, and that was the thing that was getting me this episode, and that's why I felt like a little bit more. I understand when you say filler, I get it. I'm not arguing with you on that, but this one had a little bit more substance than last week.
Oh, most definitely.
Because we know Gungi from Clone Wars, so it's not like this unfamiliar character. And we didn't know his fate. We have no idea what happened to this little guy, and he's still a kid. Like that's the part that got me was like he's still a kid, so they're not. It's not like the Empire is differentiating and being like, oh, we're going after you. No, they're just killing them because they have a lightsaber in their hand and they know how to use the Force at this point, or capturing them and turn them into Inquisitors. So, when the droids in the beginning, which very cool to see like a droid.
The Vanguards were really neat. I want to learn more about them.
So in SWOTOR, there's a droid. There's this thing called the Droid Rebellion. It's one of the. It's essentially a dungeon that you do.
Mhm.
And there's a planet that was completely taken over, operated, and run. And there's a whole droid hierarchy going on the
Oh,
planet.
that's
So it felt,
sick.
yeah, it felt very similar to that. But it was just cool to see it. Like they were operating on their own, but they kept talking about the buyer, and I can't help but think that the buyer might have been. I don't want to say just the Empire generically, but the Inquisitori would be my guess. Would you agree with that?
It's something. Yeah, I mean, it's something along those lines for sure. I mean, like we know based off of Obi-Wan that they were collecting Jedi, right? You know, they were freezing them in the amber. And so like we know that they are harvesting them for some reason. And so we're getting really close to that like Obi-Wan timeline.